games begin.
Most impressive. Shall we begin?
We gotta get it up.
Let's go, y'all. Let's go, y'all.
Y'all ready to ride? Y'all ready to fly? Y'all ready to live? Y'all ready to come on?
Let's go, y'all. Let's go, y'all.
MadWorld was the brainchild of Shigenori Nishikawa, a former level planner for Capcom and Clover Studios, the places where most of Platinum's talent pool derived. Most notably, he designed the stages in Resident Evil 4 under the direction of Shinji Mikami, and later went on to be the lead designer for the Evil Within series. It is clear to see that MadWorld was directed by someone with a background in level design, as the intricate death contraptions are byproducts of the mind of an insane playground designer. And this time I'm not talking about Keita Takahashi. Nishikawa has stated that MadWorld was made in response to the creative restraint he felt when working on Resident Evil 4. I always thought that if we made something like this, it would be really funny. I always bottled that up inside. That frustration. I was being held back. Mikami-san would always say, "You can't do that. You can't do this." Everything was rejected. Then Mikami-san goes and makes God Hand, right? He did everything he wanted with that game. Everything he wanted, right? When I saw that, I was like, shit, I wanted to make that. Now, I do not consider MadWorld to be a portrait painted with the bad blood between Mikami and Nishikawa, as they still work together to this very day, but more of an inside joke between friends. There are so many nods to both Resident Evil 4 and God Hand embedded into MadWorld. For example, the bull is MadWorld's Dr. Salvador equivalent, and even shows up as a mid-level boss with his dual chainsaws. Then there's the very first level boss fight, Little Eddie, that resembles Resident Evil 4's El Gigante. And for all you God Hand fans, well, there's almost too many nods to list, so I'll just pick out one. The game underwent 2 years of development time, and it drastically changed from its initial design. I came across an early build of the MadWorld engine, programmed with stick figure placeholders. You can see the original black and white design was retained. No yellowing in sight. The combat is a bit more sped up than the final game. We get a taste for some weapons, but the environmental kills were not yet implemented. A little later in development, MadWorld began to take shape. Here you can, well, I can't say clearly see. This footage is terrible. Let me take care of that for you. Ah, that's much better. Thanks, Akiko, is what you're supposed to say before you download my videos. Oh, and don't worry about crediting me. Not that you would in the first place, fucker. But I got that covered for you, too.
It's time for the MadWorld Deep Dive Beta Analysis.
Right off the bat, you'll notice how Jack is missing his signature chainsaw arm. And he has more of a top-heavy design that shrinks into his waist. The logo on his jacket now resembles a goat skull, instead of a skull and cross wrenches. That's meaningful. And the top left of the screen now occupies the health bar, which is different, and what looks like to be a special gauge in place of a gas meter. A couple of times in this footage, Jack was shown to be executing special moves, like the spin kick from Street Fighter, and then he does this heart rip, which thankfully carried over into the final game. Unique to the trailer are a large meat cleaver, which seems to be the stand-in for the chainsaw, and a shotgun. In the final game, Jack does acquire some weaponry from his sponsors, but it's simplified to only one weapon at a time and stored on his back when not in use. Strangely enough, there are no firearms. The only gun provided in the final game is the magnet gun, probably inspired by Half-Life, but its purpose is to be an asset to the environmental kills and not as a standalone weapon. I know this is true because I was a fucking localizer on the game. Pay attention. attention. Get your eyes over to the bottom left corner and you'll see a bog standard enemy radar that blends in with the background, making it hard to see and a poor design choice. The final map not only looks much nicer by differentiating itself from the stage, but adds details like weapon drops and icons for the objectives. Could you imagine if those were kept out? Can you even fathom what kind of gameplay faux pas they would have? Nothing about how the early gameplay is presented screams this needs to exist on the Wii, sans the one Wiimote QTE that appears on the screen during the spin kick. For the most part, QTEs are absent entirely. What the shit is fucking here? The motorcycle level is structured like an open racetrack instead of the semi-fixed on-rails presented in the final game. The final game limited the driving to straightforward lanes and enclosed arenas, and overall was the better choice in the end, as it keeps your focus on the action in front of you and not on how frustrating the Wiimote is for driving. I am glad motion was kept out of this part of the equation. That was my video essay on the alpha of MadWorld. I hope you enjoyed it. Like, vomit, subscribe. Now before we get this started, I should point out that the color tone is slightly warmer during gameplay, and it differs from the promotional material and the screenshots on the back of the box. This modification of color tone was implemented by the designers to reduce the eye strain on the player, as the high contrast black and white style would cause headaches over time. Personally, I use warming filters on all my displays as it is, but I still appreciate this consideration nonetheless. With that said, let's get into it. A deadly virus is unleashed upon the populace of Jefferson Island by the organizers of an underground survival of the fittest game show, Death Watch. The rules are as simple as they come: kill or be killed. Now, to receive the antidote, you have to play the game. There's also a $100 million prize pot to be won if life itself wasn't motivation enough. Out of nowhere, a mysterious man with a chainsaw arm enters the fray and catches the attention of one of Death Watch's sponsors.
You can call me 13, as I represent sponsor number 13. And your name? For contract purposes, of course.
Jack. Just Jack.
Who Jack is or what his reasons are for participating in the Death Watch are unclear at first, and his motivations become revealed as the story unfolds. But ultimately, no one really plays MadWorld for its story. Sorry, it's just a paper-thin excuse to get the bloodbath going. That's not to say the world of MadWorld was underdeveloped, as it totally fulfills the legacy of being a hyper-violent dystopian America coming to its natural conclusion. Something something manufactured virus, something something company that made the vaccine also made the virus, yada yada Bill Gates Foundation. You know, typical elites turning the lower class against each other, which gives them their Bohemian Grove ball tickles from harvesting all the Garmin Boja from the poor. You've probably seen this plot play out in many other not too distant future sci-fis like The Running Man or Cabin in the Woods or modern day 2020. It really does not require much further analysis.
He's gonna be banging guys all night with that gun around.
Now, the over-the-top brutality on display is a purposeful choice to underline the comedic intentions of the game's director. It jumps right over the standard line of video game violence and lands face first into the absurdity zone. Following closely in the footsteps of ultra-violent comedic games like Smash TV, its social satire on violence in the media, through its oversaturation of blood and gore, is so masterfully done that it gives a Paul Verhoeven film a run for its money. And then there's one additional layer of comedy to consider when you realize this game was handcrafted for Nintendo's most family-friendly console, the Nintendo Wii, where it remains an exclusive to this very day.
You know what that title means? Bloodbath Challenge. I'm embarrassed to admit that I can't read. Really? That's pathetic. I blame our schools.
Outside of the gratuitous amount of blood, the only other color found in MadWorld comes from the commentary provided by Death Watch's two announcers, Howard Buckshot Holmes and Crease Creeley.
I'd love to do that to some of those fucking bike messengers. Those assholes really piss me off. Weaving in and out of traffic and cutting in front of me and having sex with my wife when I'm stuck on the freeway. You sad, sad little man. Here, have a drink.
Their dialogue and comedic chemistry turns what would have been a lackluster story into an unforgettable comedic romp. They truly steal the show.
Jack, toss that guy harder than you toss in the back of a strip club. Fuck off. I'm totally kidding. You sit in the front. Damn straight.
Nishikawa said the announcers were inspired by the cult Sylvester Stallone film Death Race 2000, where the announcers would designate points based on the kind of person you kill.
Women are still worth 10 points more than men in all age brackets, but teenagers now rack up 40 points, and toddlers under 12 now rate a big 70 points. The big score, anyone, any sex, over 75 years old, has been upped to 100 points.
A major struggle that Nishikawa battled with during MadWorld is one that I personally struggle with here on the channel. He found it difficult to convey humor across cultures, more specifically to his Japanese team. Our team developed MadWorld here in Japan, and almost all the staff were Japanese. I was constantly worried with the question of how my Japanese team would understand what makes people overseas laugh. It's a tough thing to do, and I worried if they were up to it. In truth, the reaction to the signpost from the team was awful. Everyone thought it was mean-spirited and left a bad taste in their mouth. However, I think that was just the standard Japanese reaction to things. When foreigners saw it, they laughed out loud. Their completely opposite reaction that over-the-top brutality equals laughs was the moment I realized that people, countries, and cultures are truly different. Nishikawa feared that if he couldn't make his own team laugh, he would stand absolutely no chance in having his true intentions for the comedy of MadWorld to be understood worldwide. He decided to hire Western writers to help write the jokes so he could guarantee that the humor wouldn't be lost in translation. Otherwise, the game could easily come off as cruel and mean-spirited. I have to say his concerns were completely valid. I went into the options, turned off both the music and the announcers, and walked away with a different impression of MadWorld entirely. Without those two major elements, MadWorld undergoes a major tonal shift, from slapstick comedy to visceral torture porn.
Get you for that, motherfucker!
Now when I rectally impale this guy, I'm just left to contemplate my horrific actions in silence, and that's no fun. Now some have criticized that MadWorld isn't hardcore enough in comparison to Platinum's later games. It's a fair criticism. The game is quite easy and it doesn't grade you whatsoever. I take that back. There is a grading system, but only in terms of the brutality of your kills. Your kills are graded based on how much pain you place upon your foes before snuffing the life out of them, but your overall performance is not graded. It's just an old school arcade bragging rights sort of thing. You can breathe easy and play at your own pace, as it's one of the few Platinum games where you don't have Hideki Kamiya watching over your shoulder as you play, wincing at every failed dodge. Simplicity aside, the real fun to be had comes from optimizing your score through combos and shoulder throwing enemies into the plethora of environmental hazards. Each stage has its own unique set of sharp torture devices, weapons, and the most entertaining aspect of MadWorld, its Double Dare-esque bloodbath challenges. Presented by the best character in the game, the Black Baron.
Well, I tell you how I laid the money down, pimps and players, but that'd be a Black Baron trade secret. Shit, I'ma give you a hint though, cause that's the kind of pimp I is. Take a bottle full of bub, shook up nice and tight, and pop that shit down a G's throat and take aim. Just be careful to aim quick, cause this bad boy's a 3-second man, you know what I'm saying? What's going on, baby? Oh, you wanna see who was on the money tonight? Alright, folks, she don't talk too much, but she about to take care of all of y'all. Oh, you talking about me? Come on now, baby, you know my ass is always... Ah!
Oh, hell no! Oh, hell no!
The game received criticism for its short length, but if you ask me, less is more when it comes to the beat-em-up genre. Brevity is a lost art when it comes to a lot of video games nowadays, and I would much rather be left wanting more than having an interesting premise grow tired from stretching ideas thin through implementing dumb things like collectathons or repeating boss fights to pad out the experience. MadWorld is as long as it really needs to be, which is about 3 hours and a little less if you skip cutscenes. There are 4 main areas to MadWorld. Each area contains around 2 stages to explore and 1 standalone boss fight that by itself counts as a stage. Each stage lasts around 15 minutes at the most and even less on the boss levels, but that's to the game's overall benefit as the faster pace of moving through the stages keeps the engagement high and the boredom low. The first level is Vergen City Central Station, and it's your typical standard tutorial level. You get your bearings by learning the moves and how to combo kill enemies. Gradually, the level opens up and more traps are unlocked when your score reaches a certain level. Scoring high points satisfies your sponsors, who then provide you with extra lives or weapons. Now, I will say the design of MadWorld's traps are rather limiting and not conducive to stringing multiple traps together in a Rube Goldberg machine way that you might find in the Tecmo's Deception series. The kills here still require a degree of organizing from the player if they want to get a higher score. You punch the enemy, stab or bind them with multiple objects, and then group them all together to finish them off with a trap. Admittedly, MadWorld is better appreciated on a second playthrough after you have had a better idea of what tools are available to you and what the maps are like in order to plan your traps accordingly. You find Little Eddie at the end of the stage, who is a good early boss fight. He swings his Morning Star around wildly, telegraphing his every move to train the player on how to dodge and move in for a chainsaw strike. If the death blow on Little Eddie doesn't hook you into MadWorld, then nothing will. Stage 2 takes place downtown, and there's not really much to point out beyond the 2 bloodbath challenges here. The Death Press, which is rather self-explanatory, group enemies in the middle, and Smush. Then there's the most infamous challenge of them all, Man Darts, which has you swinging a baseball bat and launching humans into an oversized dartboard for points. This is what it's all about. Jude the Dude is our boss and by far the easiest of the bunch. You dodge his bullets and stun lock him with the chainsaw. Not much strategy on this one. Stage 3 is the Red Line Highway, which is one of the few motorcycle levels. It's not too dissimilar from the bike levels of Final Fantasy VII, where you attack enemies on both sides of you. The bike levels are not as intricately designed as the rest of the game. No special environmental kills beyond the occasional ramp. They're pretty much mini-games. The boss here is Von Twirlin Killer, and as his name alludes, he shoots twisters out of his fists. Now, as someone who grew up loving the 1996 classic, I always appreciate a good twister reference when I see one. They put the Havoc engine to good use on this one. Dodge and disarm him.
Those range attacks are a pitch to counter. Jack's gonna get in close, or he's gonna get blown away. breaking wind.
You're fucking heaven with this wind shit, aren't you?
Yes, yes I am.
The fourth stage takes us over to the nondescript Asian town. The Asian town levels are where MadWorld's insanity shines through. The eccentric Asian in charge placed the most ridiculous and interesting traps, not to mention the best music the game has to offer too. Great Wall Street takes the gameplay to brand new heights. You have human meat grinders, robotic sushi chefs, and perhaps the most frustrating of all bloodbath challenges, the money shot. Now I will give credit where it's due. Money shot is a great concept on its bush, or face. You shake the mad juice up, shove it into someone's dome, and launch them into an erotic billboard of death. The only problem here is gauging the distance and arc of the juice launching. Just adding an aim line would have removed a lot of the frustration. What makes even less sense is that they've programmed a sight line for the golf challenge in a later stage. So why not use it? Seems like a big oversight is all I'm saying. Rinrin is the boss for this level, and the same strategies apply as before, only she tends to block more than most. There's lots of power struggles in this one.
I'm going to enjoy every moment.
Anybody in the audience betting on Rinrin just lost your pants. By the way, why aren't you wearing your pants? Let the boys get some air.
Side note, Rinrin's death is my personal favorite in the game. The moment I saw her being crushed to death in that ramen bowl, I had the mental image of Nishikawa laughing his ass off while programming this. Stage 5 takes us to the Bistro, which is the most brilliant level in MadWorld's lineup. From a design standpoint, it has the most beautiful detail provided, with the Sakura petal slowly falling throughout. Highlights include a whole slew of ninjas, which you can throw into a vat of hot oil and turn them into human tempura, stack them high, and then serve them up for points. The Hanabi challenge has you making human fireworks. Oh, so pretty. Finally, there's the showdown with the Shogun. He's one of the better boss fights in the game. He takes fast, wide swings at you with a saw pull, leaving a small opening for the power struggle cube.
Breakfast-related food metaphors. I'm getting hungry.
The finale of the fight briefly takes the action up to the snowy rooftop for one last flourish to close things out. Stage 6 consists of a 3-round bout sumo match with Yokozuna. This fight is pure ridiculous spectacle over challenge. He's a glutton for punishment and could have just as easily been last boss material if given the opportunity.
Nice, Jack. Push that big fucker out of the ring and onto something sharp, or electrified, or otherwise dangerous.
The Yokozuna fight really underscores how easy the bosses are in MadWorld, and they all pretty much boil down to shaking the nunchuck and backflipping your way into generous invincibility frames until the enemy opens up for a power struggle, where you can remove a large chunk of their health. But I can't fault the designers for knowing exactly what they wanted their audience to experience. Over-the-top action that's short and to the point. I can't say I wasn't entertained, so I'm not sure I can complain here. Stage 7 places Jack at the Mad Castle, a gothic horror-themed spooky map. They changed things up by having zombies as the enemy. There are lots of neat contraptions here. There's a trebuchet to the moon, killer piranhas, decapitation golf games, and midway through, Uncle Death shows up and skates through the level, dishing out gnarly one-hit kills with his scythe. This is definitely in the top 3 levels, but the only thing holding it back is the boss fight. You fight against the shamans, and you're quickly overrun with multiple enemies at a time, and then one big boss that spin dashes away if you're not fast enough to strike. The only advice I can give you is to divide and conquer. Go for the small guys, and then the big guy. The enemies will land a few cheap hits on you here and there, but you'll be rewarded with one of the more satisfying kills for your troubles. Stage 8 is the dungeon, which provides a lot of interesting torture devices to play with. The Death Press challenge makes a triumphant return, but is modified to include the stage boss's hand as the crushing instrument. Speaking of boss fights, you'll throw down with Frank, the universal horror-inspired giant, and he's one of the more challenging contenders. He has the ability to run to his chair and recharge his health, so you cannot let up on dishing out damage. Thematically speaking, Frank's a perfect fit for the monochromatic design of MadWorld. Stage 9 takes us to the Sanctuary for a quick rumble with the well-endowed Elise. She can send swarms of bats to attack you and hide away in the scenery. A couple of well-timed headbutts to the titty meat and you'll have her spanked, in both senses of the word. Not my favorite fight, but the song's pretty good. Stage 10 takes us to a brand new location, Area 66, on the ride through the Access Hangar. The most notable event here is the Road Rampage Challenge that places us in an open arena where you can learn the spin attack to blast aliens into traps. The boss fight against Kojak is the sole motorcycle battle, and I have to say the lock-on here is rather touchy. So you're just better off looking at the minimap and spamming the spin attack to win. Stage 11 is the facility where the aliens and their technology is being held. Certainly the most challenging map in the game, as you have many armored enemies that can block most of your attacks and quickly recover from being stunned. The magnet gun is your friend here. After you reach enough points, aliens begin to run wild on the stage, and if you kill one, you get massive bonus points. Their blue blood is a cute detail. The Money Shot Challenge makes its return, and it's not any better. The boss fight, or shall I say, boss's fight, puts you up against the Magical Masters. Was Metal Gear Rising Zandatsu gameplay inspired by the Masters fight? I don't know. I'm asking you. Regardless, just focus on one at a time and slash till they dead, and then slash the other one. Stage 12 is another boss level, this time against Martin, a giant robot. It's the lamest fight in the game. Use missiles, use chainsaw, moving on. Stage 13 is where MadWorld begins to wrap up with the casino area. The strip is the last hurrah for the traps, but a fun send-off nonetheless. The theme here is a callback to Sega history. Most notably, the Casino Night Zone from Sonic the Hedgehog 2, with all the bumper action you remember. There's even a giant jet from Afterburner, where you can burn people alive in the exhaust. Now that's what I call honoring a legacy. This is the best level in the game to earn bonus points, and there's this bizarre decapitated head roulette game built in that I lack the comprehension to explain. The only negative I can say about this level is there's no boss fight at the end. Stage 14 is when the game winds down even further, as it's just a mini boss rush up until the final boss fight. No unique enemies, no unique traps, sad. Stage 15 is the final showdown against the immortal Black Baron. By the way, they don't ever explain how he keeps coming back to life, and that's probably for the best. I just love everything about the finale. Black Baron's Death Watch grill, his Apollo Creed patriotic style, his moveset that can break through your dodges, making him an actual threat. He can throw out tornadoes and do high-flying sidekicks that will actually fuck you up.
It was rode hard and put away wet.
What does that mean?
It's a horse metaphor.
What does that mean?
Thankfully, you have the geishas that you rescued in your corner. They give you kisses of encouragement and a happy onion to refill your health one time. The Baron is a two-phase boss fight and uniquely has two separate theme songs for each of the phases. It's a knockdown, drag-out slobber knocker of a showdown and echoes Metal Gear 4's fisticuffs with Ocelot. By the end of the game, I realized how much I wanted a full-on Black Baron game, just punching and drop-kicking his way to fortune and fame.
Yeah! Oh, baby, it's showtime!
No, that's not what I had in mind at all. I would venture to say that no one had that in mind. This ain't a real sequel. Please delete this! Alright, let's wrap it all up here. MadWorld is a rough around the edges game, but in all the right places. I would qualify this as peak white trash kidcore, standing alongside ketchup-stained giants such as Twisted Metal and BMX XXX. By the way, MadWorld shares the same writer as the latter, and I'm not joking. I would even go as far as to say it elevates the genre to a new height with its heavy inked painted 90s dark era graphic novel stylings. It's a brand new genre in and of itself that I'm lovingly penning white trash kid noir. MadWorld was Platinum Games' first developed title, which was funded by Sega as part of the original Platinum 4, which was a 4-game publishing deal with Sega that also included Bayonetta, Infinite Space, and eventually Vanquish. Through the terms of this partnership, all the IPs would belong to Sega, so any potential for this franchise remains in their hands, and I'm not going to be making any wild predictions about its chances, but financially speaking, signs point to no. But I hope I am wrong about this. By all accounts, it did everything an M-rated Wii title could possibly do to push the envelope and defy the family label associated with the Nintendo platform. It stood apart from the select few adult-themed games and took some major stylistic risks that ultimately did not pay off in the end. It's a shame that the franchise that started it all was left to rot in the vast mire of the Wii's library. It's emblematic of an era where the medium valued simpler gameplay design and took us on a blood-soaked power fantasy to escape the cum and Doritos smelling candle purgatory that we occupy IRL. You know, back when games let the hero take a golf club to the enemy's head and not the other way around.
Hey son, how are ya? It's been about 10 years since I seen you last, so I'm just gonna go ahead and try and weasel my way back into this family now. You still got that game I got you? What? You got ketchup on it? Well, I've never been good at this whole dad thing, so I'm gonna go ahead and buy your love. Go ahead and name it. Name the price for your love. What'll it be? You want a game called MadWorld? Okay, what Nintendo is it on? Oh, shit, Nintendo Wii? I'm paying no $200 fiddle fucking dollars for a Nintendo Wii when you got a perfectly good Game Boy in the year of our Lord 2009. Now go on, unpack your daddy's truck. That meth in there's tonight's dinner money, and dinner is an unlabeled can of SpaghettiOs I found on the road. Now get, you ungrateful bitch.